winner in this race, Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill. The Montclair resident elected to Congress back in 2018. Before heading to D.C., she was an assistant U.S. attorney for the District of New Jersey and served in the U.S. Navy for 9 years as a helicopter pilot. So here's our conversation at her campaign office in Bloomfield. Congresswoman, thank you for being here today. I want to talk about the affordability issue first and foremost in the state of New Jersey. If you were to win, at the end of a 4-year term, would you say property taxes are 100% going to be lower?
I would say property taxes, yes. I'm worried a lot about what the hits are going to be coming from the federal government. I worry a lot about what just happened. I spent all night fighting against the bill they passed in the dead of night to cut programs for Medicaid. It will impact Medicare. It'll impact SNAP funding and continue to drive up prices here at home.
And because of that, and the issue with property taxes, you're saying they would be lower. Would the state be able to kind of supplement some of the things that were taken away in that bill if the bill were to go all the way through and pass in the Senate as well?
Some of it, but we're talking billions of dollars in cuts to the money coming back to our state. And as you know, New Jersey is a net donor state. Mm-hmm. So we send an incredible amount of money to the federal government. And the way our state runs is they send it back through certain programs, mm-hmm. The Department of Education, the Medicaid, Medicare, et cetera. And if they were going to cut that, that would cause huge damage. So the initial thing I do is take them to court. Really, if the federal government is not going to run the programs they're on the hook for with our money, then we need that money back so we can run those programs.
They did raise salt a bit. Was it enough?
No, it's ridiculous. Look, salt was supposed to expire.
Yeah.
And the fact that they kind of give crumbs at the table for New Jersey and then do these huge attacks on some of the things that are really important to the running of our state, it's nonsense. And just to give you a sense of what happened, because everyone's still combing through this, mm-hmm. With this bill, if this goes through the Senate, what the House just did was put in place legislation that would really increase the income of the top 0.1% by $400,000, about $500,000. It would have maybe about an $800 increase for middle-class families. It would actually, people who are in the poorest part of the economic spectrum would actually lose $1,000.
So let me ask you this, because the majority that the Republicans have is slim right now. So when you look at it in the votes, is it the right time to run for governor and lose a congressional seat?
So I don't think we'd lose my congressional seat. It's a strongly blue seat. I think we'll retain it. I'll work very hard to make sure that's the case. But it is the right time to run for governor because that's where the fight's at. And I just, as a former helicopter pilot, I was always trained to run to the fight. And I think the front lines of the battle here for how we serve people, how I could deliver for people, is right here in the state of New Jersey. I think it's critical.
So I want to talk more about property taxes, right? Because a majority of the property taxes go to school districts and the municipalities. 590 school districts, 564 municipalities. So twofold question here. Would you mandate a consolidation of school districts? And if you do, how many would that be?
Well, I think what we have to start with is putting together a plan on how the state is going to provide technical assistance for some of these consolidations. Okay. Because if you're not running a K through 12 system, what you're doing is putting an inordinate amount of money in the administrative cost of running that system. Mm-hmm. And we see that all over the state. And I'll also tell you that we had a baby boom in 2007. I know that because I was part of it, and my son's graduating from high school, which means that a lot of the attendance in the school population is going to go down from here. So some of these kind of micro school districts mm-hmm. that are costing taxpayers a lot of money need to be addressed.
So you would consolidate?
There are areas where we need to see some consolidation, especially at the high school level, magnet schools, okay. Occupational schools at the county level.
What about municipalities? Would you consolidate municipalities?
So I think with municipalities, it really depends on what voters want, but I think we really do have to address shared services. And again, providing some technical assistance of how you do that. We have some towns that do want to consolidate, but there's some outstanding issues. So one town doesn't want to take on the burden of another town. How can the state weigh in there to defray that burden so that the towns can enact the consolidation if they want to do that?
Yeah, I want to talk about commuting because that's a huge issue for so many New Jerseyans, right? And the strike for New Jersey Transit, first one since 1983, over. That's great news. But people are looking ahead now, saying, I just want my trains to be on time. And so how do you ensure that the money is given to New Jersey Transit and where you're getting it from to keep the trains running?
Yeah, so this is something I have been working on quite effectively for years now. For example, I came into government where the funding for the Gateway Tunnel project, the biggest program of national significance in the nation right now, a huge commuter problem for New Jerseyans, was under attack and threat. Trump just wouldn't move on it, and I really focused on that, pushed in, held the DOT accountable, and now we have the full federal share for the Gateway Tunnel project. That's really important, and that will address, and already is starting to address, many of these problems. But some of that is going to take too long if we don't act more quickly now, which is what I got right to work on right away after the last summer of hell, about our third one, to address the catenary problems. So we got the federal funding to address some of the wire problems, which have really slowed up trains in the summer as the heat has them sagging. But more needs to be done, and in the long term, what we need is a dedicated source of funding in New Jersey for New Jersey Transit. And to me, that's going to be transit-oriented development. That's what I'm going to get to work on right away and make sure we see some of that money coming in so we can immediately address some of these problems.
Would you keep Chris Calori on as president? Is he doing a good job?
I really like Chris Calori. I'd like to keep him on if I can convince him to stay.
Yeah. All right. So from the rails to the air, a lot of issues over at Newark Airport. I spoke with Senator Andy Kim. He toured Newark Airport. He also toured Philadelphia, and he said that surging resources now isn't possible. 18 to 24 months is what it would take to train air traffic controllers into the space. So how would you, as governor, ensure someone right now, today, that it's safe to fly out of Newark?
Well, look, we can surge some personnel. The long-term path to get dedicated people in the area is 18 to 24 months, but people who are already trained as air traffic controllers could surge in. It would take time to train them in the airspace, but the time would be attenuated. So we need to surge personnel in now. We also...
Meaning taking somebody from another airspace and bring them in, but he's saying that takes time to train them, months, if not more than a year.
It takes less time than putting through the whole air traffic control school in Oklahoma. But we do need to address that now. As governor, I'm going to make sure that we have that. We put in place our program, which is a federal program, to have people going through New Jersey schools and then getting fast-tracked through Oklahoma, which would then bring a dedicated source, again, of air traffic controllers into our region. But it's not just the people, it's the equipment. I mean, what's going wrong here is these copper wires, what one person described as almost like an extension cord from Long Island to Philly. They've gone out on several occasions. And
so could you do anything as governor?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we could do is really make sure that we're pushing in on some of the equipment failures so that we can get the better equipment in place, or have an understanding, and this is what I've demanded from the Department of Transportation and Secretary Duffy. Does it make sense in the meantime to move the Philly people back to Long Island in the near term until we make sure that there is that dedicated equipment and the better line there?
I want to talk about where we're at just kind of in terms of politics. We're coming to the end of Governor Murphy term. He likes to talk about his accomplishments, legalizing marijuana, paid family leave, raising minimum wage, right? Big accomplishments, he says. But when you talk to some New Jerseyans, we're seeing more of a Republican surge among New Jersey voters. So as a Democrat, has Governor Murphy put you in a better or worse position running for office?
Look, I think he's done some great stuff. I'm really excited about Netflix studios in Monmouth. I'm really excited about the business development that he's done on some of our large-scale businesses. It's been really important as we create jobs and opportunity in the state. More work needs to be done in areas of small businesses, of permitting reform, making sure that it's not taking 4 years to get permits to build a housing development, and then home building. Because we've seen over the last 5 years here in New Jersey, home prices have gone up about 50%. Colorado, for example, has been building at a rate of about 2 to 1 as to New Jersey. And we've seen their home prices go down in the last several years by about 20%. So we've got to do more on home building.
Yes. Would you sue towns, by the way, if they didn't meet their fair share?
So I think that's part of it, but really that's actually not going to address the missing middle, for example, and all of the homes we need to build. So what we really have to do is come up with a plan to build out and repurpose some of the already developed areas. We need to keep some open spaces in the state. That's a really good value here in New Jersey with a lot of built out land. But also make sure that we're utilizing our spaces wisely so everybody knows that strip mall or office park that's not being utilized. We need to build homes there.
I want to ask you about this poll that we did here at PIX-11. Found majority of New Jerseyans, 53% want the next governor to work with President Trump. 47% say they want the next governor to stand up to him. So what's one thing you would stand up to the president on and one thing that he's doing that you would work with him on?
So look, I think when people say they want governors to work with Trump, they want governors to fix the chaos and the harm that's coming from Washington, D.C. So in other words, mitigate the disaster that Donald Trump is creating in our state by cutting horribly Medicaid, Medicare, Department of Ed funding, when we know in New Jersey that's our money. That's money that New Jerseyans pay into the system, and he's now just keeping it in Washington as he's driving up costs for everyone. So I would, as governor, make sure I'm working to create a different path forward here in New Jersey, taking the federal government to court when they are not executing on their mission and their responsibility to deliver for New Jersey, holding firm on our rights and values and constitutional protections, and then driving down costs here, providing that pathway forward as we're building houses, driving down utility costs, pushing new power into the grid to drive down costs, fixing our broken healthcare system. That's what I hear from voters that they want me to do, and that's exactly what I plan to do as governor.
And then lastly, on the topic of immigration, should New Jersey be a sanctuary state?
So look, we have to protect rights and freedoms. What that looks like is making sure that we're not picking people up in the middle of the night without charges. I believe in due process. That's what the Constitution demands. I'm a former federal prosecutor. I believe in our system of justice.
So is that a yes on sanctuary state?
Well, what I'm a yes on is making sure that we are protecting people here in the state with the constitutional protections. I'm going to make sure we're protecting rights and freedoms, but I'm also, like I said, a former federal prosecutor. I'm going to make sure that people who are violent criminals who break the law are prosecuted as well.
So should there be any level of protection for undocumented folks?
The Constitution.
The Constitution. And would you allow, I guess, local police departments, we're kind of seeing play around the country, some local police departments are involved in some of these ICE raids that are playing out. Should local law enforcement be involved with ICE?
So the local law enforcement needs to carry out their duties, and what towns pay for through taxes, what the state pays for, is making sure that they're carrying out their public safety duties, that they're following the Constitution, and that they're following the law. And that's what I would demand from them as governor.
Okay, and we're at time. Congresswoman,
so
I appreciate your time.